Hola amigos, aquí estamos junto a Simon Gawesworth, que acaba de llegar de Tierra del Fuego, de pescar en el Río Grande. Así es que nos va a contar un poco cómo estuvieron las condiciones de pesca, que fue un año con condiciones muy particulares, con las aguas bajas, y nos va a contar también un poco cuáles fueron los equipos que estuvo utilizando. Así es que, bueno, le damos la bienvenida. Simon. Thank you very much. I know that the fishing, you come from fishing from Rio Grande, Tierra del
Sí,
Fuego, with a very specific situation in terms of water, situation, climate, but
yeah,
water basically.
yeah.
Can you tell me which were the key equipment that you were using? Which was the in that situation? What
Yeah, it was a very low water year.
very low water.
And this is the third year in a row that I've been down there and it's had very, very low water. So conditions have changed, sadly. Fish are still there in numbers, but you have to do different things than normal. In the old days, you would throw Skagit lines and T11 and T14 tips and through big streamers and swing them, and maybe sinking lines like 300 grain sinking lines getting down deep, or 400 grains. But there isn't the water for that. In the last couple of years, the water has been so low, and so techniques and tactics have to change. And this year, we had to do a couple of different things. On that water, there are a number of holes, just big, deep holes on the Rio Grande. And then the fish pools, yes. And the fish, because the rest of the river is low, they go into these deep holes and these deep pools. So you have some pools that are full of fish, and then some pools that have only a few fish. But the most important thing is generally going to be stealth. It's
Okay.
not heavy, big stuff. It's trying not to scare the fish. It's approaching the water quietly, standing on the water's edge, not going in and scaring the fish. Even with the big winds that are down there, you can still scare fish. So this year and the last couple of years, the techniques have evolved into a couple of different ways of fishing. For the spey angler, you want to fish like a spey rod that's about a 7 weight, 12'6", 7 weight, a little bit lighter than standard 8s and 9 weights, just like big game, because you want to fish lighter outfits, just not scaring fish. The rivers are smaller with that low water, so you don't need to cast as far.
Okay.
So a 12'6", 7 weight is great. This is Sage's R8 spey. It's the one I had down there. And I caught a bunch of fish on that.
Yeah, beautiful rod.
Beautiful rod, so easy to cast. So that's a really good starting point if you like to fish the two-handed rod. And there's a lot of pools that have that two-handed rod, wide pools like Gawesworth, who's a pool with lots of casting space and lots of room down there. And Curvis Wanakos is another one that's got a lot of distance and rocks with fish in that the spey rod is ideal. But to be honest, we fished on the main river, the Rio Grande. We fished mostly single-handed rods.
Single-handed rod.
Yep, just a smaller pools, so you can fish them better with little one-handed rods. This is Sage's R8 salt. I use the salt because there's a bit more power for the wind.
For the wind.
So I like the salt over the R8 core just because of that balls it has, the guts. But it's an 8 weight. So we fished 8 weights, caught most of my fish on the single-handed rod. And
because of the water, just because of the water situation.
And these buckets, these pools that the fish lie in, maybe are only 8 or 10 meters wide. They're just small holes, so they don't need a very long two-handed rod.
Okay.
If that makes sense. And a lot of the techniques involve twitching the fly slowly, and that's easier with a one-handed rod.
Yes.
And then a lot of fish were caught on the tributary rivers, the smaller rivers like the Menendez,
yes,
which again is a small river.
Yes.
So for rods in that river, we almost exclusively fish the single-handed rod. Of course. It's such a small river. You can fish a switch rod if you like. I fished a couple of trout I caught on the switch rod. This is the R8 switch rod, little 11'6", right, which you can if you want to use the two hands. But ideally, a single-handed rod is to go. And then in terms of lines, again, you have to get away from the traditional Skagit lines for that river. The guides really didn't want anyone fishing Skagits because of the scaring fish. So it was almost exclusively Scandi lines with a two-handed rod. Almost always with Versa leaders on the end.
That was my next question.
Intermediate was the killing one on the two-handed rod. We would strip sunray shadows on these and black leeches, most of them being caught on the intermediate Versaleader and the Scandi.
Medium Versaleader?
I think medium. Yeah.
Medium Versaleader.
Medium is the right size for 7 and 8 weight rods. You can get the heavy, but that's a bit big for the 8 weight. That's more like a 9 weight size. So medium Versaleader is ideal. And then the single-handed rod was a combination of 2 techniques. One, we fished a floating line.
Yes.
This is the Predator.
Predator, excellent.
Great line. Again, a little more aggression in the line because of the wind. You don't want the gentle presentation lines down there because you won't cast. So the Predator is an excellent line for down there. And this is left over from my last fishing session. And this has an intermediate Versaleader on again. And the same thing, we would strip sunray shadows and little black leeches on there. And those things work pretty well in most of the pools on Menendez or on the actual main river itself. But the one that caught the most fish when you found these buckets in these pools, we were fishing T11 tips like this.
On the Predator?
We would actually attach them to a running line.
Okay.
And just cast out the running line, and this would sink on its own. And you fish very long leaders. We would fish leaders of this stuff, 1X tippet.
Yeah, okay.
Really, really fine material. And you would put on your 1X tippet, and you put on your mow tips here, the T11 mow tips in 10 and 12 feet, and tiny flies. I mean, most of the fish,
conditions
like 14.
were really, really difficult.
Very difficult.
And especially for those big browns.
Yeah. And the guides had kind of worked that out and told us what to do in advance, and we brought the gear down. But essentially, if the water is low, you want to fish the light Scandies.
Yes.
And if you're on the single-handed rod, you want to fish floating lines with more power like the Predator and Versaleaders. But I would also be prepared to take down some T11 tips to get down in the holes where the fish were lying, and some really fine tippet material. And if you have all that, you're pretty well set. But again, conditions change, so I would always still go down with a Skagit in your bag. If the rain and the river comes up, you're still set for it. And that's about it. That was how it was this year. Still a very good year, excellent fishing, caught lots of fish, some big trout, but we just had to adapt.
Exactly. Well, that's an incredible description of a tough situation. I've been there many times, but I don't remember that low, especially this time.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Remember that low. So, thank you for your explanation, my friend. Great.
Anytime.
Bueno, ahí estamos junto a Simon, que nos acaba de explicar una situación totalmente atípica para el Río Grande, pero es el tercer año ya que esto sucede en Río Grande, así que hay que estar preparado, y nada mejor que un consejo de Simon Gawesworth, nuestro gran maestro, nuestro profesor de Este y 2 manos, y también de una mano también. Así es que muchas gracias.